Welcome everyone. I will be the one presenting today. I have prepared a slide deck that I will go through. There are somewhere in the slide deck some slots for questions, but I would like you to raise your hand or come up with questions immediately when they pop up, and we could preferably also take them on the fly. And at the end of the presentation, I have already also given some time for some finishing questions and summary of the presentation. As you know, my name is Torben Dalsgaard. I'm a chief consultant in Danish Standards, and we are going to talk about CE marking, EU regulation, and standards today. So this is a list of topics that we are going to cover today. I've skimmed some of the projects. Sina sent me the projects that you are working on. It's very interesting. It's very, really cool. I'm not that into those areas. I'm not that much into innovation and research, but you surely are working with some really neat stuff. Just off topic or off the record or off the theme for today's session, I could recommend you to, when you're working in an innovation project or you are working with innovation at all, to use standards as a catalog for inspiration, a catalog for support into the innovation projects. There are most certainly not specific standards for whatever you are innovating, but there are most certainly some related standards that could be of inspiration to working with innovation and research. Now, I've noticed that one of the projects was about artificial heart, super spacey, if you, very really impressive. I don't know nothing about it. There's no standards for artificial hearts or artificial anything from a human, but I do know that there is a standard about electrical safety. And this particular standard for electrical safety is about the human reaction to an electric shock. And there are some research behind this standard, research which is made by animal hearts and not human hearts. So what kind of electric shock and what are the measures of the current before you will have a vertebral fibrillar, a heartbeat dysfunction. So maybe that could be some inspiration into what kind of use cases could be used for an artificial human heart. Now, also some of the other projects that I skimmed through, there might be some interesting standardization going on about wearable electronics. Definitely not in the field of what you are working with in your projects, but maybe there could be some inspiration. Maybe you could find out something about safety in those standards. So, look for standards in general when you are working with research and innovation. Now back to the topics. Let's get started. I will give you a short introduction to who we are at Danish Standards. We are Denmark's national standardization organization, an official standardization organization. Every member of WTO, the World Trade Organization, and every member of the European Union are obliged to have a national standardization organization working on eliminating technical barriers to trade, and in Europe to support the European internal market. So that is our official role as Danish Standards. We are a commercial foundation with nearly 200 employees, and we have a corporate partnership with the Danish Ministry that is renewed every year. And when we speak about being a standardization organizations, we are aware that there is a lot of standardization organizations, private, public, or something in between. But when we refer to standardization organizations, we refer to the logos for the member organizations for which we are a national member within. And those are the marks on this slide. This is ISO, EIC, CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. So this is the standardization organizations for which we are a national member. Now, standardization is done internationally, mainly international, and those standardization projects internationally is within the organizations ISO and EIC. On a regional level, it's within the organizations CEN, CENELEC, and ETSI. Now, EIC and CENELEC are dealing with electrotechnical standardization. ETSI is dealing with telecommunication, with radio frequencies, communication in general, and CEN and ISO is dealing with all the rest. Don't ask what the purpose of this is. It's historical. It can probably not be changed, and that's just how it is. Now, an introduction to the CE marking. I would say CE marking is a European product regulation, and many of you are not dealing with products in your projects, as per se. But nevertheless, this is a good introduction to the legislation framework that are within European. We have a raised hand from Barbara.
Yeah, just a clarification. We do actually have projects. For example, some projects are thinking to develop a specific stool or slippers or a bike helmet. So we actually have projects that are aiming to get product, like a user product that is not health related.
Yeah. Cool. Very nice. Very nice. Then this is just spot on, because this is product regulation. And the CE marking is basically a certification mark that indicates conformity with health, safety, and environmental standards or requirements for products sold within the European internal markets. It's also recognized worldwide, and it's being copied and it's being acknowledged by authorities outside the European Union. So, for instance, Canada is accepting machinery which is CE marked as being legal to use in Canada. So, and a lot of the Middle Eastern countries are using the same standards and a system based on the CE marking. So this is also an introduction to the system of the CE marking, so that it can be used in other relations. Now, I mentioned it before, but this is the main reason for the CE marking, this European single market. Now, as you can see, the United Kingdom is no longer a part of the European single market after Brexit. But what the UK has done is that they have implemented a 100% copy of the European legislation, 100% copy of the European standards, and they have made a transition period for which the European legislation can work in conjunction with their new UK CA mark, is what they call the CE mark. It's a conformity assessment mark, but it's 100% copy of the European market. And they have just postponed this or extended this transition period indefinitely. So that is, for now, the outcome of the Brexit for the UK is that they have the exact same legislation as in Europe, but they have nothing to say in making it or implementing it. It's 100% copy. Now, the huge benefit for the single market is that we have a huge consumer, a huge market, 500 million consumers for products. That is much larger than the United States. So it's a huge market for the industry, and to be compliant with such a huge market opens to easy access for these suppliers. It gives a lower unit cost, and it also provides greater commercial opportunities. Now, the citizens of the European Union, they will benefit from lower prices, more innovation, and faster technology development. That's where you are entering. And they will benefit from higher standards of safety and environmental protection. As I said, the CE marking is product legislation, and we have the European Commission has different product groups for CE marking. I just highlighted some of those that might be relevant for some of the projects that I have seen you're dealing with. So that could be active implantable medical devices. For once, medical devices in general. It could be in vitro diagnostic medical devices. And it could also be something about eco-design or of energy-related products. Electromagnetic compatibility is also a thing that is applicable for almost any product with some kind of electricity within the product. But as you see, this is not an extensive list of product groups. This is just an example, and with a highlight of some of those that might be more relevant for you. Now, this cross field between legislation and standards is based on what is called the new approach. And the new approach is what was introduced in the mid-80s when the European Commission made the internal market. It is called the new approach. So if you want to read something about this, you need to Google new approach. It's not because there was an old approach as a name, but there was a system before the new approach, which is what I'm here calling or referring to as the old approach. So you would have European Commission legislation, and in a wide perspective, also a lot of national legislation, different national legislation, and then you would have very few testing standards for which you could use to test the product up against for the same testing requirements. Now, the new approach, the essentials of the new approach is that all the essential requirements are within the European directives, within the European regulation, implemented by all national members. Then you have the more specific and technical requirements, you know, the solutions to meet the essential requirements is described in standards as technical specifications. Sorry. And then, of course, you have a lot of testing standards as well. But the essential requirements, which is a base of a political process, a very heavy and slow process, that is reduced to an absolute minimum, very few pages, and then all the technical and more substantial requirements are moved into the standards, and the essential requirements is explained and elaborated in the standards. Another thing for the new approach is that these standards that are supporting European legislation, they are based on a mandate, and they give what we call a presumption of conformity. So on top of these technical standards and these test standards, there can be some requirements for conformity assessment as well. So that's a layer on top of the harmonized standards. Each product legislation describes the conformity assessment procedures. Then we have the actual marking of the product with the CE marking. And you also need to be aware that products can be covered by more than one piece of regulation, one piece of directive. And you as a producer or manufacturer of the products needs to investigate probably which legislation that your product is need to be fulfilled by. Then the fourth thing is the national authorities who carries out the market surveillance. So this is a system based on trust. So you don't get your product approved anywhere. There's no authorities checking whether the project is okay or not. It is up to you as a producer or a manufacturer to make a safe product, CE market, maybe use some, you have to use a conformity assessment procedure. I will get more into the conformity assessment later. But then you are able to put your product on the market with the CE marking and a declaration of conformity. Now, if you, on this declaration that you do, if you use a harmonized standard in that process, you get a presumption of conformity. Now, when I say it's based on trust, that is because the national authorities are carrying out a market surveillance. So that is, you know, few samples of products that they are checking. And if there is a CE marking on the product, and if there is a declaration of conformance with the product, and there is a reference to harmonized standards in that declaration of conformity, it is up to the market surveillance authority to prove whether your product is unsafe or not. So this burden of proof is falling on the national authorities. It's falling on the market surveillance authorities if you are using these harmonized standards. And these harmonized standards is made in the same way, so to say, as all European standards, but they come from a request from the European Commission. So they are based on a mandate given by the European Commission to the European standardization organizations. So the European Union is making some legislation. They are identifying a need for technical specifications for standards. They make a contract with the European standardization organizations in order for them to deliver these technical standards. When this request is signed by both parties, the standardization organizations is going to work with experts from the industry, from authorities, from private sector, from public sector. Everyone is participating in making the standards. Then the European Commission is assessing the standards in its final procedure, and then the standards will be published and cited in the official journal of the EU. And when a standard is cited in the official journal of the European Commission or the European Union, this standard gives this presumption of conformity, which means that it's up to the market surveillance authorities to prove whether or not a product is unsafe. If you're not using a harmonized standard listed in official journal, you will have to make this proofment of safety by yourself, and you need to do that by a technical dossier where you will have to describe in very, very precise manner what you have been doing as a manufacturer in order to fulfill these essential requirements that are within the European legislation. So the four cornerstones of the internal market is these essential requirements, which are the same throughout all of Europe, and it's implemented by the European Union in all member states. Then we have this conformity assessment, which is divided into different modules. Then we have the actual marking, and then we have the market surveillance, which is checking up on whether products are safe and protecting the consumers from unsafe products. So some small steps. I won't go into details with this. It's a lot of text. I think you can see this webinar. You can pause it and read the text. But just to say, it is the manufacturer of the product who shall affix the CE marking on the product. You may only affix a CE marking on a product if there is a regulation or directive that states that this is a subject for CE marking. It's illegal to put CE marking on products that are not to be CE marked, and it's also illegal not to put CE marking on a product that has to be CE marked. I hope that is understood or understandable. And it's the manufacturer of the product that's the entity responsible for this CE mark. Now, for technical issues, that can, of course, be done through an outplacement to a testing institute or stuff like that. But the responsibility is on the manufacturer. Now, all this European legislation and the CE marking, there is a guidance material from the European Union. It's called the Blue Guide, and it's provide guides on the implementation of the European product rules. I can highly recommend you to use this guidance and yeah, use it as a guidance. Barbara again.
Yes, I have some questions. Some of them are very stupid. The first question is, who's helping small companies or small manufacturers in understanding whether their product is under the CE marking regulation? Is there any bodies within the Commission that does that? And then also, who's helping them in selecting the standards, you know, making sure they actually have selected the right standards for the CE marking? So these first two questions, and then I'll ask my third one.
Yeah, and not at all stupid questions. Very good questions. So thank you for that. There is some guides. I do not have a specific reference to the guidance or the help from the European Commission, but I think the main help is in the national members. So we in Denmark have some guidance, and we offer some basic help and some generic help for SMEs in Denmark, and so are the other member states of the European Union doing in their national territory. So I think for help, I would suggest to search nationally at first before searching at European level.
And then the third question is, and probably I kind of know the answer, but the third question is, most of the projects that we have right now, they're not going to go in manufacturing by the end of the project. Actually, they're far away from them. But the point is to understand, because they're developing a technology, and the point is to understand whether a technology that produces that will eventually produce the product, to understand whether there is anything that they need to consider at this early stage to facilitate the eventual acquisition of the CE marking for their product. So they may try to maybe, if I develop a car that doesn't have an exhaust system, for example, and they're working on this car without an exhaust system, I guess that's unlikely to get a CE marking. If that's a product that gets a CE marking, I don't know. I'm just giving an example. But it would be good for them to know that they have to, you know, include an exhaust system since the beginning of the technology. At the first steps of the technology design and development.
Yeah, definitely basic, you know, in product development, you need to have not a focus, but an eye on potential regulation for whatever that you are inventing or trying to produce. And that's also why you need, I believe that this generic overall insight into how the regulation works can be beneficial when for these products that are it's far out in the future to have a product that is being put in production. But when you're getting closer to a production date, you know, you need to consider that your product needs to go through some certain tests. Maybe there is a standard for those tests. Maybe there are no standards for such tests, and that could give that could inflect the time to market, so to say, from when you are from when you are nearly finished developing your product and to when you are actually allowed to place it on the market and start making the revenue. That's later on, of course. And then in this early phases, as I was saying in the beginning, you can find a lot of inspiration in the standards that exist in relation to many things about safety or environmental issues and things like that. So there's a huge catalog of inspiration within the standards. If I may mention, that's off topic for today, because today is about regulation and market requirements, but standardization is, most of the standards is voluntarily, and they are not supporting European legislation. And those standards are made to as a market access. These standards are made for new product types in order to create trust towards the customers. So if there is a European or international standard made for your product, it gives and irrespective whether it's part of legislation or not, it gives a certain trust to the customers. It gives a certain trust to the users of one's product. So it could, in a commercial issue, standardization is a highly recommendable tool as well for maturement of a product, for maturement of a technology, and for market access. Now that was off scope for today, but yeah.
I can just add just a little bit also. I think, as also mentioned here by Barbara, it's key to understand if the product that you're working on at some point needs to be CE marked, because sometimes people are actually surprised that they need to CE mark their product in order to enter the European market. A good example is, for example, there has been some stories sometimes about elderly ladies that have been knitting little teddy bears that they, for example, give out to hospitals. And since these are toys and fall under the toy regulation, then these teddy bears that are being knitted by elderly ladies actually have to conform to regulation and be CE marked. So it's never too early to figure out, does my product need to be CE marked in order to be put on the European market? So if you are working with some of the different elements that was mentioned by Torben earlier, like medical equipment or electrical products and so on, then again, take a look at what your national authorities are doing, but also take a look at the directives, because here you'll be able to find out if you kind of fall under that scope. And regarding the questions to where to find the standards, they are mentioned in something called the official journal. So all the standards that are linked to regulation, you'll be able to find here. And I know Torben also a little bit later will talk a bit about how you can see which standards are linked to regulation.
Exactly. Yeah. So I mentioned that not all standards are linked to legislation and thereby voluntarily standards. So they are not put into effect unless someone is demanding you to fulfill a standard. That could be a business partner, that could be a regulator. But in general, standards are voluntarily until someone is putting them into effect. Now, these standards that are related to European product legislation and CE marking, they are still voluntarily to use. If you use them, they give this presumption of conformity. You can use you can choose to just fulfill the requirements in the legislation without using the standards. In that way, you need to clarify how you made the product as safe or safer than what is stated in the standards. This means in reality that standards in what we experience is in reality mandatory, because the task of not using a harmonized standards is simply too time consuming and too complex and not a better option. Oh, sorry. I mentioned these essential requirements. They can always be found in the first annex of the directives or the regulation. It varies a lot from regulation to regulation, how much and how the essential requirements is formulated. But I've just shown here a few examples. Electromagnetic compatibility, it's a half page. Low voltage directive, 1 page. Machinery directive, you need to make a risk assessment. And then there is 30 pages with essential requirements. And then we have the medical devices regulation and in vitro device regulation with some very specific essential requirements. Now, I've spoken upon this conformity assessment, and I was going to come back to it, and now we are here. So the CE marking is also always combined with a conformity assessment, and this type of conformity assessment is divided into different modules. The modules are described in each and every regulation, the same annex, and in that regulation you can see a description of which module or modules that you need to use together with the CE marking within this area of legislation. Now, the modules are, correlated to the risk. So the lower the risk, the easier is the conformity assessment module or method, starting with an A, which is basically an internal production control. So you have an internal control of your production. You have a register of complaints or broken products or stuff like that. And then you higher the risk is with your product, the higher is the demand for the conformity assessment. And when it comes to in vitro medical devices, you will come up to this red area with a mandatory use of a notified body, a third party that needs to assess your product based on the standards and the legislation. And that is the highest module is a conformity based on a full quality assurance from a notified body. These notified bodies has to be approved of the European Union. They have to be approved within the different areas of regulation. So if you are dealing with medical devices, the notified body has to be approved by the European Commission within the specific legislation of medical devices. So you have to make sure about that. We need to speed up. I also talked about this declaration of conformity. This is the declaration that has to come along with the product, same as the actual CE marking. There are some information that has to be given on this declaration of conformity. I have spoken to you about the reference to the harmonized standards, the reference to the legislation. You need to have a name and address of the manufacturer and a lot of other things. And we have a standard that gives guidance on this declaration of conformity. So when you are getting to to that part of your projects, you could look into the standards 17,050-1, who gives guidance on the declaration of conformity. I think it's, you just have, you only, for now, you only need to know that there are some strictly administrative and formal requirements for the product legislation, and it's about market surveillance. It's about protecting the consumers. So you need to have a name and an address. You need to have some kind of product type, batch, serial number, or whatever. The reasons behind those requirements is that if the market surveillance authorities discover a product that is unsafe, and it's unsafe based on a fault, it's nobody done anything on purpose, but this product is out on the market and it's so unsafe that you need to withdraw it from the market. Well, then the authorities, they have to have a phone number. They have to have an address for which they can reach out and say, you have put a product on the market. We need to help each other to take it off the market because children are suffocating or whatever. So quite basic requirements. And once you have these under control, you are halfway through, I would say. Now, when I was talking about marking, it's not just CE marking. It's also this identification by type or batch or serial number. And it's also a marking of the name and address of the manufacturer. And then we have some different other markets related to other European legislation. So we have the garbage can marking, which is a marking for electronic waste equipment, waste. That's just an example. We have eco-design, which is regulating energy consumption within products. They need to be marked as well. I won't go into this. Now, this is a stepwise CE marking process. It can be found on our website. It's here in the presentation. So you, basically take you through the steps that you as a manufacturer has to go through when you are into that state of your product development, that you need to consider compliance with regulations. I won't go through the steps. It's there. It's for you to use on a later stage. Now, related also to one of the questions earlier on, I believe the right place for you to start searching for guidance on this is at national level. But as I also mentioned, there's this blue guide from the European Commission. It's available on all national languages, but you can find a lot of information at national level. And I definitely know that Danish Standards has a lot of guidance on this, both in Danish and in English, about CE marking. So if you are located in Denmark and Googling through a browser on a Danish connection, you will definitely get some hits from our websites. There is also some information at the European Union level. I believe that's an active link to the guidance in the yellow text. So a lot of help, a lot of guidance. Is there any questions? We have a few more minutes, and I think I have some extra slides just in case that Barbara.
Yeah, it's not really a question, but maybe it's more a comment. I know that this it's overwhelming for many researchers. It's overwhelming for me too, because this is for most of us is an uncharted territory. In conjunction to what you said, to get information whether you need CE market and which standards, I want to remind you, everybody, of the service that Sinje through the Horizon Standardization Booster offers. Through the advanced service, you will be at least helped in identify the standards that might be of relevance to your project. And so that could be the first step. Really, some of the standards are, for example, somehow linked to CE marking because they are linked to legislation that could give you some hint. Try to use that service to help you take the first tiny step in navigating this very complex area.
Yes, you are never alone, I would say, in this world. So feel free to contact us, and we'll of course do the best we can to help you out. And I think also, even though some of these technologies are still in the early stage, I think it's quite interesting for you to take a look at, because it also can help you with the exploitation route of the products that you will be working on. Because if you are working in one of these areas that we mentioned, and you want at some point to have an exploitable product, then this is something that you need to take a look at. And again, sometimes sooner is better than later, I would say, because then you are prepared for what you need to do in the future.
And if I may add something, please take advantage of Sinje's service. I call it Sinje's service, but it's the Horizon Standardization Booster as early as possible, because the service as it is offered now will only be available until next summer. Is that correct?
Actually, September.
Next September. So, and then we don't know what will be offered. So please take advantage of it before it's too late.
Yeah. A good point, very good point. And may I just also refer back to this step-by-step CE marking? It's actually breaking up this rather complex process into smaller steps, which is capable of, so start by step 1, Google your way through, and then you will eventually come to step 2 and etc. So yeah, use the stepwise process, and it's definitely doable and capable. Did we have another
question for Phil?
So I just wanted to ask, should we apply for that in a formal way? Or, I mean, I'm just thinking that we're just down the road from you. Can we pop by for an informal discussion?
I would say both.
Both, okay.
If you apply for the HSbooster, I'll just insert the link in the chat in a second, because we have, I would actually say both would be an advantage, because in HSbooster, we are using external experts within your area of expertise. So that means that they will be able to give you some technological advice that we might not be able to do, because we work with standards and standardization. That's our key area. But if you want some more technology-specific advice, it would be a good idea also to go for the HSbooster. But you're always welcome. We are in Nordhavn, so drop by or send me an email, and then we'll find out. And I will just now in the chat put the link for where you can apply. It's free of charge. So do not hesitate to try it out. The only thing you can lose is a couple of hours of your time, and you might instead win a lot of good advice and some knowledge. So please do take a look at it if you think that would be relevant for your project.
And Sinje, you mentioned that there were 2 services, one of the advanced and one the premium one, and you recommended
Yeah, we have, well, we actually have several services. In HSbooster, we have one called the proactive one. Here we can help with carrying out a mapping of the standardization landscape in the particular area that you are in. But this is a brief service. If you want the full service, then you should go for the link that I just put here, where we have these open calls, where we will assign an expert that will then take 1 to 4 meetings with you, depending on what kind of advice you need, and help you out for actually a 3-month period of time, where they will help you with the standardization activities in your project. And then, of course, like since Phil is from Denmark and we are from Denmark, then he's also welcome here.
But just to clarify, so if I got correctly, if you're really completely lost, maybe can't do first the proactive. So
Yes.
then that helps you to define the question that you might have and then apply to the premium.
Yes, and if
Is
you
that
want
correct?
then you just send me an email and I'll also write that in the chat. It's fairly easy. So if you would like to have a mapping within your area, send me an email and then we will carry it out for you and sort of help you in regard to if you should apply for the premium service or not at this time. And in regard to the premium service, you can apply more than once. So that means that nothing is basically lost if you apply. You can do it again in a later time if you think that would be necessary. Until September for now.
And if I understand it correctly, so we've applied for this as the ELM portfolio, which is what we're doing now. But we can also be applying as individual projects separately.
Yes, so there was advice after we talked with Marie-Eve, with Sinje, there was advice. So we do this webinar, so more like a knowledge sharing with you as a portfolio, but then the application for the Horizon Standardization Booster Service will be at the individual project level.
Yeah.
Any final questions? We have 1 minute. I think that was it then. And again, we will send you the slides and we will send you the recordings afterward. And stay tuned for the 30th of October, where we have the final webinar that we have scheduled for now, which is going to be on life cycle assessment. So I hope to see as many of you there. And thank you and have a nice day.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.